Hi, I'm Tim Bradner. We're here in Wood Center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks campus, and we're here at the Sustainable Future Conference that's organized by Governor Bill Walker. And I'm with Vince Beltrami, the Alaska Director for AFL-CIO. And Vince is with the Alaska Labor Organizations, and they have a vital stake in our state's future, like all of us do. Welcome, Vince.
Thank you, Tim. It's great to be here. Thanks for asking me on.
Well, Vince, this conference, of course, has just started. We're beginning to hear some of the rather grim statistics. What are you hearing? I mean, what do you think about where we are? We listened last night to Gunnar Knapp from the University of Alaska talk about potentially very serious physical gap that we have to cover. What's your take? You've been here at the state for a long time. What's your take on it?
I'm hitting my 25th, 26th year in the state, and this is the toughest economic times I think we've seen since I've been here, for sure. And I think this is a fantastic dialogue to try to get at the problems here. And what I heard so far is that we're not necessarily that far off. Given, even though the budget isn't settled at this point in time, we're only, from what they're talking about, only about $300 million away from what Pat Pitney, the OMB director, says would be roughly the right size of government, or $4.8 billion budget.
And that's compared with other states.
Right, when you compare it to other states,
correct. In terms of our general fund budget.
So one of the struggles is to figure out what is the right size of government. And what we do know, based on Gunnar Knapp's presentation and everything else that we've heard, is you can't just cut your way to solving this budget. It's gotten cut pretty well. There are some efficiencies. I just came out of the first session with the Education and Training group, where there was the University, Department of Labor, and the K through 12, Commissioner Hanley. And just the first part of that discussion, I can see in the realm that we operate in, which is post-secondary trade education and training, and the stuff that all three of those different agencies engage in to some extent, that there could be efficiencies just there with figuring, because right now they compete for a lot of the same dollars for some of the post-secondary, hands-on training type education, et cetera. So there's efficiencies that can be found there.
Vince, maybe you could just refresh us on real quickly what the crafts do for training.
Oh, well, the crafts, I was the statewide director for the IBW apprenticeship program for a number of years, and have worked with all the others. And we do roughly 8,000 hour apprenticeship programs. That's 8,000 hours in the field, with roughly 1,000 hours of classroom education mixed in with that time. So, and the trades, at least the union crafts, we essentially pay for all of that on our own. That's not with any help from the government. Although we do get some of our programs get a little bit of step funding from the state. Most of it's all on our own.
So there's a lot of potential for synergies with state agencies and training then.
Absolutely. The Alaska Workforce Investment Board identifies, what type of training needs to be delivered statewide. If we have this big gas pipeline project coming, which we've all been waiting for 30 or 40 years, we feel that we're ready to, ramp up as soon as we know there's a decision to move forward on that, on building the size workforce we need, with an emphasis on Alaska Hire, and that we can actually meet that. But we have to do it in conjunction with some of the efficiencies that are going on, as I mentioned, with some of the state-funded, initiatives on trade education and stuff.
Vince, what's surprising right now, as grim as all these numbers sound, that our private economy seems to be doing very well. You guys, your people are pretty busy, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I heard one of my affiliates from Fairbanks that runs the plumbers and pipe fitters in a recent ad, and he said, "Hey, if the union hall is empty, that means everybody's working," and he's happy. And that's what's happening right now. Pretty much because of the previous big capital budgets over the last several years, there's still a lot of work out there, and up on the oil field, there's a lot of work going on up there. Some say that's due to the new incentives that were built into the new tax structure, but there's a lot of activity going on. Most of our members are working. The big concern is that, as Pat Pitney pointed out, the smallest capital budget in 15 years was just passed at about around $115 million. So while there's a lot of money from the previous years out on the street and projects getting done now, in a couple of years that could be real problematic if there's not either more money injected or a pipeline that's getting ready to go and stuff like that. So right now the work is good.
Yeah, and I guess you could say the same thing about the oil patch. I mean, we're at record oil employment, ironically, with oil prices being what they are. But what it is, it's the accumulated effect of past projects that are approved some time back. So what's coming, the worry, as you mentioned, with state capital budgets, is what else is coming into the pipeline to keep people working down the road.
Yep.
Well, you know, listening to Gunnar, though, it just seems like this gap is just horrible. If oil, we were lucky and oil went up to $80 or $90, we'd still have a gap of $2 billion, $3 billion. How in the world can we cover that?
Well, I think that's what this dialogue is all about, is looking for solutions. You know, one of the things that, you know, I don't ever like to advocate, nobody likes to advocate for tax increases on a personal level, but one of the slides that was shown yesterday I thought was pretty stark, where it shows that when it comes to personal, like, you know, state income tax, sales tax, those types of things, that Alaskans pay, I think half as much as the next state, and that we're the lowest taxed citizens in the state of Alaska. And that's largely because 90% of the government's been funded by oil, the oil that flows through the pipeline. But that ride, you know, may soon be over. People are going to have to start talking about it, and certainly no one wants to talk about that in an election year.
Just real quick, what's your take on use of permanent fund earnings?
Well, I think that's something that's going to have to be looked at some point. I don't like some of the things that I've heard about taking a lot of that off the table, you know, $6.5 billion and putting that into the corpus of the fund. Basically, you're talking about eliminating 2 whole years of filling a $3 billion budget gap if you remove that money out of the equation. But if they need to go after it for, you know, for whatever's liquid there that they can use over the next couple of years and still inflation proof and protect dividends and stuff like that, I think, you know, everything's on the table, whether it's CBR, whether it's earnings reserves, whether it's taxes, whether it's, you know, looking back at the oil and gas tax credits and the policy that we just put into place a year or 2 ago. You know, how long is going to be too long that we let that play out to see if it's actually going to do any good to help the state's bottom line.
Yeah. Well, Vince, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Tim.
Vince Beltrami, and I'm Tim Bradner. Thank you.